Ti ricordi quella sera che per gioco tu baciai? Sembrava solo un'avventura.
We are here in Mexico City for Bitso's Stablecoin Conference. We are joined for a very exciting interview with Morgan Williams from Blockradar. How you doing?
Good.
What's the
Losing my,
vibes? Day two. Are you feel what are the energy levels like?
it's one of these things where I was really tired yesterday, but the energy and the vibes are just giving me new life. So I think like a lot of what today and yesterday has been is like making new friends. A lot of people come here to network, and I think for me, I actually just made some friends along the way, maybe business associates, but I think just making friends and seeing old friends was the vibe, which kind of gives you that new energy.
One of the best parts about not leaving crypto and staying true and like not going to work in AI or these other things is
Yeah.
like coming to these events and like reconnecting with people like you, people
Yes.
that you've gone through different seasons with. So
Yeah.
Morgan and I worked at Coinbase together briefly. So tell us a bit about Blockradar. What was the story of the migration into that company, and what does Blockradar do? I feel like you guys are sort of new to the scene in some ways.
We definitely are new to the scene. So first, what is Blockradar? Blockradar is a stablecoin wallet infrastructure provider for FinTechs, but specifically those in emerging markets. And so this is what brings me here to Mexico this week. The origin story is that, so Drew and I both worked at Coinbase. And so there was a time that I was at Coinbase and I was supporting the launch of Base on the continent of Africa. Met my co-founder then.
The launch of Base. Okay, so you were
In 2023, this is 2023. Back, rewind to 2023.
Yeah, Base was very new.
This was literally September. Yeah, and they
And then,
launched
like,
in August.
Jesse and team are like, Morgan, go like
They
get
were
this to be used.
They were
and-
like, Base is for everyone. Base is everywhere. Make sure Base is everywhere. I was like, okay, I got it.
How did you do that?
I did. I went to Nairobi. I went to Lagos. And then I also went to a couple other cities.
I'm thinking of Jesse in these like videos, like walking about the street. Like, do you want to get on chain? Do you want to get on chain? Like, is that what you did, or how did you actually
no,
do
this
it?
was that was before those days. These days were very much like I was a lot of pre-work because, like, honestly, I didn't know a ton of people in the space on the continent. And so I made some friends of friends, like literally a Vietnamese guy in Singapore introduced me to a founder in London who supports people in Nigeria. And then they just kind of, snowballed from that. And so from those conversations, I like made friends similar to how I'm making them today. And so then they supported me on my trip. So basically they helped me organize all of the events that we needed to do. It's pretty casual. It was really just getting people excited about Coinbase coming to the market. That was the first time I believe Coinbase as a brand showed up on the continent.
Really? So Coinbase as a company did not have any presence in Africa before that time?
They had different presence in different ways. They have different portfolio companies with CB Ventures is in Africa, but also they had the wallet at the time.
Coinbase wallet. Was
Yeah. Actual representatives from the company. I think that was one of the first times, if not the first time.
It's awesome.
Yeah. But Base was the product that actually allowed us to go to the market. I think and also the wallet team joined me on that team. Well, at that time it was the wallet team. Now it's the Base app.
Base app.
So
Yeah.
But at that time they joined me on the trip. And so it was a really good trip. And I met a lot of cool people who I'm hanging out with here now that I met at one of our events in Nairobi. She was the one who actually told me about this conference.
Okay.
Yeah. And so she's here. And so it's been really nice to like be here, see her again. Right. And so anyways, continuing on, I met my co-founder along that journey. I met him at one of our events in Nairobi, and we kept in contact. And then towards the end of last year, he'd started building Blockradar. And he was like, hey, I need some help on go-to-market side. My co-founder's technical. And so he was like, I don't really know where to start. Like, I need help. And I was like, I'll help you from an advisory standpoint. Did that for a while. And then it kind of like just blew up. And not necessarily the business, but just the market itself, right? Like that was then around the time that Bridge got acquired. And like it's just been on fire, right?
That fall of last year.
Yeah, fall.
That's when we started the business as well. It was like, let's go all in. Like this is a wave that is still people are riding.
Exactly. So as I got more involved, I was like, there's something here. And one of the things that my co-founder and I have that I think a lot of the wallet infrastructure providers don't necessarily have today is that they're built from the West. And I'm a Western, I'm American, right? But the challenge is that if you don't really know everyday life of what FinTechs are solving for everyday people, it's really hard to make sure that you have the right tech stack, the right infrastructure in place to actually support the customer's use cases. And so I've lived in Latin America, I've lived in Asia, my co-founder lived in Africa. So we have this like strong expertise of like, one, the markets and what people are doing and how people are using and not using even stable coins. And then we also have a strong background in payments and FinTechs. I've worked in
Help us Westerners understand what those things are, like practically, like when you're building. I think a lot of the decisions that we've talked about of how you've built Blockradar, how it's presented to clients, and what type of clients you're going after now. Yeah, just like what does that mean? Like, what are the things that maybe a client of yours in those regions would, you're building it for them versus someone in the US? Like, what's the difference?
Yeah, so like a use case that maybe you might not understand or, the average maybe American or European would understand is that like in places like Colombia, people go to their local grocery store or like small shop to go pay their utility bills. I'm not talking about like, one socioeconomic status. I'm talking about everyone.
They go to pay like their electric bills or water bills.
Yes.
They go to
Yes. And so people, and this is, and I think now it's evolved, right? But back when I was living in Bogota in 2018, that's how you had to do it. You had to go and have cash. You had to go get cash and you had to go pay your bills. And like for me, it felt very behind, right?
sort of like an ATM style
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah,
but like
exactly.
opposite.
Yeah. Also tell you too that like the CVC code on the back of your debit card, right? Like the number you need to be able to do any online transactions. When I arrived again in 2018, I got a debit card that had one on it. My partner at the time, his debit card didn't have it. And like half of my coworkers didn't have it. So what does that mean? You fundamentally aren't engaging in e-commerce. Well, if your debit card, you can't use it online and you have a market where people are highly unbanked and underbanked, like access to credit is super, super hard, right? I got access to credit because I work for Uber and they're like, American Uber, okay, cool, you got it. But some of my coworkers didn't have access to credit. And these are people who are well-educated, high earners in those markets. So anyways, going back on my point to say is that nuances like paying your electricity bills in cash in person, or nuances like, just now in less than 10 years, people are getting more acclimated to e-commerce is something that's like mind-boggling for someone like myself and yourself. And so these are the use cases that stablecoins can like uniquely help and provide. So if you think about that fintech who's now enabling these transactions, that fintech is now working with other fintechs, right? Who are then allowing people to use money to pay their electricity bills, but they're using money, cash, then top up like a local, like a mobile wallet, like a Movi wallet or a Rappi wallet, right? And so now that middle layer wants to be able to give their customers more exposure to stable coins, right? Whether it's they're helping their customers from a treasury flow standpoint, or they're using stable coins for treasury management and treasury flow standpoint, right? Because if you think about these companies like a Rappi, right? They're in almost all of Latin America. So they've got to go pre-fund all of their different bank accounts. So stable coins comes in and helps them do that. And so now you've got this middleman provider who's actually helping do the cash collection. Now they're able to actually help start giving that facility to some of their providers. But again, it's like these little nuances that are not different in other parts of the world, but they're difficult to comprehend how exasperated the problem is and how it feels and why fintechs and individuals are like desperately trying to get access to stable coins. Because when the problem is really, really hard and you're frustrated, you turn to alternatives very, very fast.
Like in these commercial conversations, you're selling Blockradar as a infrastructure stack to go help these fintechs offer these types of more equitable, accessible rails
Yes.
to their end clients or customers. That's the model.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So for example, like one of our customers in Africa is a neobank, right? And so this neobank wants to give their customers USD exposure. It's almost like the dollar app, very similar to the concept, right? But this neobank now wants this extra feature and value add, this Nigerians want now to be able to have access to USD, and it's very simple. So what we do is we provide them the wallet infrastructure so that they collect Nigerian naira. They then convert that into USDC, USDT, and then they use our wallet infrastructure to issue a dedicated wallet on behalf of their customer, and things that they're exploring are things like yield that they're going to then be able to offer their customers. And then that customer, once they're ready to off ramp, they just off ramp back into Naira. They're none the wise that was stablecoin, right? And so, like, so many use cases, you see that here, and it's so real. Like, I was literally just talking to some of my ex Uber friends this morning, and they're like, "Yeah, like I love this stuff." Like, he was literally telling me about 2-3 different apps that he was using that gave him now these USD accounts because he's a Colombian living here in Mexico. Wants to get more access to USD, wants to be able to park his funds, in stable coins. And so is using all of these different, UX friendly experiences to do that.
Yeah. So you see, in some ways, do you see this similar to, like for me, I'm like trying to differentiate. You have the wallets and accounts infrastructure compared to the styles or
Yes.
conduit style
Sure, sure.
services. Like, are you
Okay.
essentially doing both, or do you work with certain partners that can help you with those like named accounts and things like that?
Yeah, so we're more of the former in the embedded wallets side of the house. And so what we do is provide those embedded wallets, but we also do like all of the treasury management. So again, we're purpose built for fintechs in emerging markets. So these emerging market fintechs want modularity. So they not only want to have the ability to offer stablecoin wallets, but they want the ability to now have yield. They want the ability to like allow customers to invest in USD stock markets. Like one of our customers lets their customers do that. And we do all of like the back end, I don't want to say orchestration, but the facility and infrastructure that they can use to like do their treasury apps better. So if you think about them, they've got all these programmatic wallets. Now they need to be able to sweep those funds into their master wallet to do cash management, to do cash in, to cash out, however they're doing their business, right? And so we do those things for them. And where we see ourselves
You're
where,
able to like kind of move the funds around in creative ways, or what is
well,
the
so we
what is
don't,
the custody? What's the custody like?
so we're non-custodial.
Okay.
Now, what does that mean for our customers? Some of our customers, where they have license, they go and do custodial services. Cool. Right? They have their own VAFs, and so they use our wallets and they offer them as custodial.
Got it. Under their own. So you're
Yes, under
okay.
their own license. But for us, every relationship we have is always non-custodial with our direct customer. Now, how they decide to show up and give those wallets to their customers is a different thing.
Are you seeing more of the, I'm imagining like more of the like banking use cases or like regulated use cases? Which one personally are you more excited to go after right now? On-prem banks, like they will do that with the stack, or is that less popular right now than the maybe like a non-licensed fintech who's just like, yeah, I'll give the custody to my end users and like it's not that big of a deal?
We're in the process of talking to one of the largest fintechs on the continent of Africa, and these guys are like, we want non-custodial wallets, right? Like that's what they want, right? And they're in every great position with the regulators, with everyone, to be able to go and pursue specific licensing. But what we see, not only with these large guys, but medium-sized guys and small guys, they mostly are pushing the whole non-custodial approach because it simplifies a lot of things for them, right? Because if you think about, a large African fintech or a large South American fintech, they're operating in multiple markets. Maybe in Mexico, the regulators are more friendly. Maybe in Colombia, you've got like, a sandbox where you can test, and maybe a few fintechs can do stable coins. And then maybe you're in Argentina and you've got more clarity there. And maybe you're in Chile and you don't know what's going on and you don't have it, right? So now you're a fintech that's operating across all these markets. You don't want
the
to.
compliance rules different, like different countries will have different rules for when you need to or all those different nuances I can imagine can be, if they are holding the keys, that becomes really, really expensive, I can imagine.
Exactly. Not only does it become expensive, but it becomes very challenging to figure out how to do it. So it's like you want to offer these stable coins everywhere,
Mm.
at the same time. But now you got custodial wallets and your providers only has licensing in, Argentina. I'm just making it up something. Argentina and maybe some other licensing that you need in maybe Brazil. But now what do you do in Mexico? What do you do in Colombia? So you want the non-custodial wallet so that you can go and show up in all of those markets, right? In one swoop. And so that's what we're seeing. I definitely think that the whole non-custodial path and push, and I'm so happy the US came out with the whole Project Crypto and saying that non-custodial wallets or decentralization is American right. And obviously we're not talking about America today, but I love one of the things my friend said on her panel yesterday. And she said, when the US sneezes, the whole world catches a cold.
Huh.
Right. And, for good or for bad, that has different meanings. But in this case, I think this is a cold that I want the rest of the world to catch. I want regulators to catch up to, because if you look at Asian regulators, these guys have been at the forefront. Right. And we're just catching up in the US. Right. And so I hope that, in Africa, in Latin America, you start to see regulators show up more and try to figure out how to navigate these sort of things. And I think that as regulators get more involved, especially in like the whole I should say the government getting more involved in like partnerships with stablecoin issuing and these sort of things with local stablecoins, you'll start to see a lot more progressive.
Do you think that's because of just the power of the dollar globally, that exists, that level of like, because you're right. Like now in a post-genius world, it does feel like all of these different governments around the world are now really seriously announcing, like Japan's doing a bunch of stuff lately. We were talking about Brazil's upcoming regulatory frameworks, like Mika was early. You got Singapore.
Philippines has been around for like almost 10 years.
But it feels like maybe, I don't know, maybe it's, I'm not a regulatory expert by any means, but it feels like now are putting forth pretty clear, like, okay, here's how to play by the rules. Are you seeing that as well?
Absolutely. I don't know if it's dollar dominance. I think that regulators and markets don't want to get left behind. And I think like for those reasons, and they also don't want to be able to like have a specific level of arbitrage that can take place if they're not involved.
You feel like it's staying ahead for them?
Yeah, I think it's like staying ahead or catching up, if you will. And I feel the U.S., I would argue the U.S. has actually been catching up. And I know we're talking about how they're making the step forward, but it's definitely been a catch up if you look at, again, the East and you see what's happening there. And so I think that regulators definitely want to get involved in markets where there's a lot of like cross trade facilities, right? Like, as a lot of people have mentioned today, like Latin America's lifelines are exports, right? And remittances. And so there's so much dependency on your international stakeholders. If you're selling mostly to the US or you're selling to China, there's so much dependency on the rest of the world that like you can't not take a stance. And so I think like the US finally coming out, who kind of, again, sneezes and everyone's like, oh, I think that actually starts to give way to Mexican regulators, Colombian regulators to say, okay, like these guys are a big part of our, economy and our our global stakeholders. And so we have to kind of figure out how to make sure we can win in this, because it's not about necessarily playing nice. It's about making sure they can win too. Right.
Yeah. Okay. So you have a big commercial conversation with some unnamed African fintech.
I mean, we're just, let me just clear, we're just in early conversations. It's not like they're my client yet.
Are you, like when you're going out here and you're like, is this room more so full of like potential partners, less clients for you? Like,
that's what I thought. Like, I actually, to be honest, I didn't schedule any meetings. I didn't schedule one meeting because I was like, oh, like, my goal here is to just see like, what's the vibe? Like, who's here?
There's a lot of infrastructure here.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of my competitors are here, right? And then what ended up happening is that I've like interacted with 3 or 4 potential customers that are large, not only in Latin America, but also in Africa. I'm surprised to actually see some of these people here because they don't touch stablecoins today. But what's happening is that, again, they're trying to figure out how to get ahead, to, bring more efficiencies into their business. And so they're either the founders are coming here themselves and like learning about what's going on, or they're sending their staff here to be like, go learn about stablecoins and see if there's something we can do here. Like I just talked to a guy who, works at a large fintech on like the Francophone part of Africa. And I'm like, you're here. And he's like, yeah, like this is the Stablecoin Conference. It's a big one. And we just want to learn. He was like, honestly, I don't know. And, so what he said was like, I feel very confused. Right. And I was like, okay, this is the kind of person where you've got to just explain in a very simplistic terms why stablecoins still solve the problems. Because he literally said, he's like, oh, we have millions of users. We have, we're processing like billions. Why would I use stablecoins if things are working? That's what he said to me, right? And so I was like, well, let me tell you.
It's so exciting when you have companies finally with distribution and volume and customers and existing, like we've lived in this kind of like early startup crypto native world for many years. But now it's like companies with volumes and distribution are finally realizing like, I need to learn about this. I need to take this seriously. And what would it look like if I used a different rail or a different infrastructure or a different thing? It's like so exciting to see that because it's not like you're not starting from zero. On day one, you implement Blockradar. Like you're going to have like if you win this big African fintech, it's not like some early startup. It's like millions of wallets like overnight,
Overnight. And that's what we see even when we onboard like big or medium-sized, organizations. Literally, their wallet growth explodes. Right. And just like, oh, wow. Okay. Like that's what this looks like. And so I think like for me, like I said, I didn't book any meetings. Some people book meetings with me and I, had those meetings, but I ended up having these amazing conversations where again, like good potential customers that I wouldn't have, even known that was here. Right. Our potential clients.
The clients and customers are guests. They're not everyone with the booths are like, that's the way it should be. That's the way it should be. It's cool to see that like, there's finally a good amount of like people who are potentially learn and potentially buy who are coming to these things. So shout out to Bitso Business for doing this.
Yes.
It's been really great. We need a wrap.
Sure.
So give some final thoughts on where people can find out more about you and Blockradar.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So final thoughts on that. Like you can check us out on X. You can check out our website. Blockradar.
What's your co-founder's name?
Abdul Fattay.
Abdul Fattay.
You couldn't just say short for Abdul, but he's going to make sure that I say it's Abdul Fattay because he's getting upset that people shorten his name. So Abdul Fattay, he's a technical genius. This is his second-time founder. Like he's like super popular across the continent of Africa. He's really, really good. And I really enjoy working with him. I'd say that he's super scrappy. And I think that's what's really nice about having like someone who's young and like hungry, like wants to build. We've worked with some of the largest FinTechs, payment companies in the world. We work with some of the best engineers and the level of hunger and scrappiness isn't sometimes there. So
it's true.
Anyways, find out about us on X, LinkedIn, Blockradar.co.
Awesome. Thanks, Morgan.
Yeah. Thank you.
Ti ricordi quella sera che per gioco tu baciai? Sembrava solo un'avventura di Palma.